My name is Max. I'm an entrepreneur. I've created 3 companies. Actually, I wanted to call myself, I'm Michael Scott from Dumble Mifflin, something like this, because what will be today will be maybe a bit strange. Please say hello in the chat. We see that every second there are new people joining. So wow. This is, I first time see this. And this is our event. So I'm very excited. Very happy. And thank you for your reposts, because this number of participants is because of your support. This is our first event. So I prepared something to make it easier for me, not to forget what do I have to do and what do I have to say. So the first is make English mistakes. Probably I've already done some, and I will do more today. Then behave weirdly and awkwardly. So this I don't have to check because I do it naturally. And last, let speakers do their job. Most of you know, maybe I started doing like 1 month ago or 1.5 months ago, that during all my online meetings, I stand up and show some rare skill, which is a fun fact about me. This skill I learned something like 15 years ago. Yeah, I can do more if you if you like it. Yeah, this skill I learned something like 15 years ago on Japanese martial arts. So I do this to see your smiles. I do this to make your cameras on. Because we will go to P2P groups later, and like we will see each other in small groups. So yeah, thank you very much. Today we'll have 2 parts. The first part is speakers part. We'll have 1 hour and 40 minutes for 5 amazing speakers, studio founders and CEOs, and also for 2 humble speakers, Dmitry Samoylovskikh, my partner, and me. Later, the second session is for P2P Studio Hacks contribution, where every participant can contribute some hack, and we'll gather all and then share some document with all people who participated. Yeah, so the speakers part consists of 15 minutes, first 10 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for questions and answers. And so during the presentation of a speaker, just put your questions into the chat, so we can ask and like the most interesting questions, so that we can ask the most popular questions to our speakers. Yeah, Alper, Celen, please, your stage, share your presentation, and 15 minutes for you.
Thank you very much, Max. I'm Alper. I am a proud studio enthusiast and a geek, and I'm founder of VSOC Ventures. We're based out of Dubai and Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. We operate across the Middle East, North Africa, Pakistan, and Turkey. My studio journey started some 8 years ago. Before that, I was a founder and exited the company, and I was thinking about what to do next. And we decided that we have to make startups and entrepreneurship somehow easier. And that's how we came up with the model. I do sit on the advisory board of GSSN, the Global Startup Studio Network. I also master moderate the Studio Bootcamp. These are some slides that I'll share from the first session of that Studio Bootcamp that I teach. And it's just, hopefully will put us on the same stage. And we just want to make sure that we end up being on the same, stage, and we, have the same definitions, if you will. And one thing that I can do is, you can see my screen, right, Max?
Yeah. Yeah, right. We can see.
Yeah. So one thing I can do, but I won't do, is juggle. So I wish, Max, you had told me that you were going to bring up the nunchucks. I could have also maybe done some juggling, but hopefully you'll be entertained with my knowledge of the studio model. So let's jump right into it. What is a venture studio? I think one of the main issues that we have as a studio ecosystem is that the studio model is not so well defined, and people are confused as a result. People who are not studios call themselves studios. People who are studios don't call themselves studios. This is what we tried to come up as a more formal definition. To us, a venture studio is an institutional co-founder. That term we use all the time. I think it clarifies our difference versus other venture models like venture capitalists, accelerators, incubators, etc. And that we do two things. We proactively invest and build ventures, and we have some central services organization. For some of us, it's very heavy, very capable and large. For others, it's smaller, but not non-existent. And then we use some kind of a playbook, repeated processes, and become a learning organization so that every time we build a venture, it's better, hopefully easier than the last time. It's essentially parallel entrepreneurship. It is what I call professionalization of innovation. So how is this different? Another visualization, every venture, every company in the world goes through this, right? Somehow somebody comes up with an idea. That's what we call the ideation. Then hopefully there's some validation, although a lot of people skip over that step. Then there's creation, where you build the business, then you grow to a certain size, and you then become a scale up and become a large enterprise, take it public, etc. And different venture organizations, be it incubators, accelerators, seed, VC, growth VC, etc., play in certain span of that venture building process. What's very unique about us studios is that we play the widest, right? We take things most of the time from nothing, from not even the existence of an idea, all the way to finding product market fit and reaching that stage where the business would be worthy of scaling up. And there are a few things that are very unique about us. We are the only model that's proactive, right? A VC needs to wait and have a venture walk in the door, or they have to go hunt for that deal flow to be able to invest in it, right? An accelerator the same, right? There has to be something to accelerate. Whereas we can say, hey, this market needs this, right? In this region, in this vertical, somebody has to build it. Why don't we build it? Let's go do it, right? And then we do spend the widest in our support of the founders, and we, support the deepest, right? We're not advising, we're not involved on the sidelines. We're acting as institutional co-founders, where we're actually developing the product, where we're doing the marketing, where we're naming the business, where we're recruiting, etc. And many of us do this with some process that we define. For us at Enhance, we have written this digital book. It's a playbook called the 41. We have 41 steps that takes us from that ideation, validation, creation, growth, all the way to when we spin off, when we find product market fit, then spin off, scale up outside. It may not be 41 steps for everyone, but I think every founder of a studio has some steps that he or she has in mind in taking the venture through those steps. And in those steps, we're trying to specifically answer certain questions. In ideation, we're trying to figure out what thing should we build with whom, right? Whom really matters. We're trying to find the founders and the idea, the best idea to build. In validation, we're checking, are we really building the right thing? Right? We go talk to customers, talk to investors to make sure that if we build this, customers will buy from us, investors will invest in us. And then when we're creating, we're asking, are we building the thing right? Will it scale? Will it have the right features at launch, etc.? And then in growth, we're trying to figure out how do we ensure that this thing that we build is going to sustain itself. It's going to be able to raise money externally. It's going to reach profitability eventually, etc. And this is, I think, my most famous slide. It's I think a lot of people still remain confused on what is a studio and how it's different from an accelerator or venture capital fund. I think this is one difference. I think venture capital there's a lot of, it's a very successful industry. A lot of the things that we use day to day is a result of venture capital, but it is really searching for this one mythical founder, be it a Superman or a Wonder Woman that is going to come in. If you look at Sequoia, Axel, and recent, Kleiner, Perkins websites, they all look for that superhuman that is going to come and build this thing that doesn't exist, which is a unicorn, right? Whereas I think we approach a bit differently. We're trying to look for that Tony Stark and build the Iron Man, the exoskeleton around him by really offering tools beyond money, beyond advice, having the shared services, the business infrastructure, regulatory support, a tech stack, tools, platforms, etc. as studios. And the model is taking off. I think the number of people participating, today is one evidence of that. I think if we were to do this, 5 years or 10 years ago, you'd hardly find, maybe 50 people joining in, right? The model is taking off. We keep a database at Enhance. We try to keep it as precise as possible. We're almost up to 900 studios active around the world. What you see is some level of acceleration even through COVID. And please keep in mind that the actual number is probably higher. There may be some that have failed that we haven't caught yet, but there will be many more that we haven't seen yet, because if you're in the first few months of your studio journey, there may not be enough data out there for us to catch yet. Also, in some markets where there's not as much English content online, we may not have caught you, like in Far East, etc. What's very interesting thing is that Europe has caught and surpassed North Africa this summer in the number of studios. So there's something very interesting is happening. In general, US would be the typical giant in venture, in any type of venture organization. But Europe, I think, is seeing the benefits of the studio model in comparison, having more advantage in a more fragmented market like themselves. This is a heat map. There are some interesting things. The world record is not in Silicon Valley. The world record is actually in New York City, and number 2 and number 3 are London and Paris. Right, we're going to hear from Quentin a bit later, but there are certain things that you expect, right? Some of these hotspots, like Silicon Valley, New York, maybe LA, you would expect, but then you see that there's quite a few studios, in Europe where the model is really taking off. As I mentioned, Paris, London, there's some in Amsterdam and Berlin as well, but also Singapore, and we're trying to also create some hotspots here in the Middle East through our efforts. Why is this happening? If you ask us, why is there all this interest in the, venture studios? One thing is, I think, the VC winter is kind of helping. I think people are looking at, innovation in venture, and we've been there, right? We, for 26 years, we've been saying, hey, maybe this is a better way, or maybe this is a nice complementary way to do early stage venture. But we do 2 things that I think attract people. One is, on one hand, on the left side, we do better economics. Studios have founder economics. Since we are founders, we have the best economics, of any investor, because we have some of our shares come at 0 cost, because as typical founders do, day one, we get some founder shares. We get less dilution because usually we are more efficient. We are sharing of resources that usually leads to that. And then we have deal flow access. That's, our investors end up getting access to, our best ventures as they're spinning off, and many studios allow those investors to follow on invest in those ventures. And then even when we fail, we can recycle technology, product pieces, talent, which you normally would not have in venture capital. On the right-hand side, we have the very chance of success. We do better ideation, something that is, quite done, often done haphazardly. We have better access to talent. People want to work for a studio much more than would for pre-seed, PowerPoint presentation startup with 2 people. And then we have the shared resources that, allow us to, get more capability online quicker. And then eventually you end up having a brand effect. Like Quentin, or, we have Elliott Parker. If you're High Alpha, if you're, eFounders Hexa, you have an easier time hiring right now, because the brand effect, just like it plays out very favorably for Sequoias and Excels of the world, is playing out for those of us who are succeeding in the studio space. The problem is we're not all the same. We're very different. So we look at, what are the different elements of a design of a studio, and here are the 10 that I came up with. I'm not going to go through them all, but essentially we break them into what do you do as a studio, how do you do it, and what do you get in return. And different studios, do it different ways. Here's us and Hence. We're a co-founder studio, and we invest a large time, and as a result, a lot of resources and time into our ventures. and in return, we have sizable chunk and control. Whereas as studio-like organization like Antler would be very much at the opposite end, right? It's not exactly a studio, but a studio-like, it starts from scratch, it would be very different. Thus, one of our issues is that we evolve to look like very different beasts. And this does cause some confusion. And it's one of the things that used to be much worse. It has gotten much better over the last 2 years through events like this and us telling the story and us getting the nomenclature right. But we are still very different beasts. If you think of High Alpha, they're different than us. High Alpha is High Alpha Innovation, right? We have enhanced innovation. PSL is very different. Hexa is different. Science is different, etc. And that causes some confusion. What we do is complex by its nature, so it needs to be nuanced understanding of what we do for it to make sense. I want to talk about a few trends just to finish off what I see as trends, because I talk to a lot of studios out there. One thing is we see VCs moving upstream. So we see a lot of venture capital funds are either launching studios or studio-like, organizations that start things from scratch. I think I'm going to, I really bet that this is going to continue happening much more in a meaningful way. Recent examples are like Greylock and their last $1 billion funds. They actually have part of it, for their new studio. And Peak 15, which is Sequoia India's new brand, this is their partitions, is doing something like a studio in Singapore, Australia as well. Second trend, corporate venture building on the rise. This is really booming around the world. Elliott will speak a bit later. We see so many corporate studios coming up, and venture studios like us are doing it. Management consulting firms are doing it. Software design agents are doing it. So we're all trying our hands at applying the studio model in corporate innovation. Other thing is studio funds are becoming common. In the US, Europe, there are a lot of studios with funds already. And when we did a survey of some 56 studios, I think over 90% said that they either have a studio fund or they're going to launch one. They want to launch one. And it becomes a very efficient way of having, a studio that may be evergreen, tied up with this fund as a funding vehicle that can continuously fund ventures, under the studio. And then finally, this I have a bit of a beef with. A lot of people are calling themselves venture builders. I just did a search today. There are 322,000 results for the venture builder search term in LinkedIn. There's only 900 studios and 322,000 venture builder results. So it's a unique thing. And I think we're going to have this, as we make the model more and more popular, we're going to have some confusion. Some people who probably should not start studios will start studios. They will compress. And the brands will be thrown around as venture studio, venture builder, etc. But that's a trend that we definitely see. My last predictions, I think 10 years ago, we were a studio village. There were only some 152 studios around the world. Now, I would say we're a studio town, a growing town, bustling town, with some 896 studios. They've raised some $22 billion to the studio entities. And if you look, 10 years out, I think we're going to be the studio city. We're going to be this metropolis with 3,000 plus studios. We're going to be at the scale of venture capital in a number of studios. And there'll be, $100+ billion invested in studios themselves. Okay, I think that's it. One last thing that I will say, if you want to see the studio database that we hold, there's a public version of it. You can go to startstudiomap.com or enhance that online. And if you're interested in learning more about the studio model at Maro, Global Start Studio Network, parent company, we hold a venture studio bootcamp, and the next cohort starts in January. Max is one of the products of that, so I hope he vouches for it as well.
Yeah.
How did I do it?
Thank you, Alper. So we have 1 minute left. Actually, Venture Studio Bootcamp. I met Alper there. It was great. I mentioned it. Not only this white paper by Enhanced Ventures, but also bootcamp in my report. So you can find the link there also. One question, because we are out of time. So what is your UCP to co-founders, and do you work with them or just hire professional to implement your own ideas? The question by Michael Ehrman.
So there are two camps in the venture studio world. Some studios like us we want to ideate from T0, from the first month, together with 1 or 2 founders. Right? We like 2 founders, but usually we start with only 1, but we'll ideate together with them. We do not build a product and launch a demo MVP and then hire a founder or a CEO later. Some studios do that. They do really well. It's not our approach. We feel that by having the founder day one and ideate together with them, we end up having her or him better, married to that idea and be more passionate about that idea.
Mm-hmm. One more short question and short answer is, a lot of us have spent a lot of time putting together the case for why a studio is a great idea. Can you talk to some of the downside risks? What do we need to be ready for? Like, what are the main problems of studios?
Look, I think I can say 2 things. One is, there's always that debate, because the market doesn't, fully understand yet in large numbers what a studio does. There's always that debate, hey, why do you have so much space in the cap table, right? So you have to set your cap table so that, as you're building your traction, you're able to raise funding from external sources. I think that's one downside. You cannot do this in isolation. You cannot build an amazing business and just hope that people are going to invest in it. And there are some vulture studios that are taking, 90, 95%, etc., and that just doesn't work. That's one downside. The second downside is, no matter how much of a playbook that I make, right, no matter how, beautiful processes that we generate, etc., we are in the people business. We're not in the technology business. We're not in the innovation business. We're in the people business. So the downside is, as much as we say we're not looking for Superman or Wonder Woman, finding a Tony Stark is also very difficult, right? And if you don't get that right, you have only so many shots, and you're actually investing quite heavily, both your funding and your time, much more so than a VC. So if you don't get that, founder studio and founder venture fits right, studio model can have high risk. Super,
Alper. Thank you very much. Yeah. You can say thank you in the comments. You can send some funny emojis if you want, or hearts. Yeah, thank you, Alper. So now we are going to Dmitry Samoylovskikh, and I would suggest for the second, if we can see all us here on the screen. So I saw Alper did something like this, but I would suggest to do something like this together. And maybe something magical will happen. I don't know. Let's see. Some people have some magic today. Yeah, Dmitry Samoylovskikh, because it is our announcement that we are launching the Syndicate for venture studios and their spin-outs, their startups. So, Dmitry, share your screen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Max, for organizing this event. More than 5,000 people. I've never been to any Zoom meeting like this before. I don't know about you, but it's just tremendous. My name is Dmitry Samoylovskikh. I've been an investment advisor since 2006, and I have built 7 startups in the past, including my latest one and the major one, let's say. This one is called Uniborn. It is a venture platform that helps angel investors source investment opportunities and execute them. And since we want to serve angel investors as great as possible, we've been doing our own research to find the best asset class that would have a risk-return profile pretty similar to Y Combinator alumni startups. In terms of survival rates, in terms of success rates, but which would have the entry valuations of way lower than like $20 to $25 million, which became the norm today for YC startups at seed stage. So basically, we aimed to kind of create a go-to solution for every angel investor to build their kind of foundation. That's what we call it. A diversified portfolio with the highest potential return and basically the lowest risk possible. And funny enough, by this summer, we had a couple of dozens of candidates for this asset class, and the venture studio model had been on top of the list for several for several months, I guess, and we couldn't kill it. So we really tried hard to do this, but we just couldn't do this. And then one day I opened up my LinkedIn, and it's just been exploded by the big startup studio research by Max. And I thought, like, what a coincidence. And so I immediately reached out to Max saying, like, hey, it seems like we came to pretty much the same conclusions. Let's join forces and build something great out of this. And now I am going to pick up my... Okay, great. So yeah, that's basically how we co-founded foundation. This is the world's first investment syndicate that is exclusively focused on investing in venture studios and startups that they create.
Interesting.
Yeah, first of all, foundation is not a fund, at least yet. It's a deal-by-deal syndicate. So the way it works is like Max and myself, as co-leads of the syndicate, we find the best investment opportunities and do our scoring and do our due diligence. And if you are a member of the syndicate, you receive this exact selected investment opportunities and decide whether you want to invest in a specific deal or not. So it's pretty much like a free subscription to see the deals that we personally make. So we have two types of deals. First, we invest in venture studios, primarily in their holding companies, not funds, at least in the beginning. And second, we invest in early-stage startups that are created within the studios, mainly on pre-seed and mainly on seed stage, I would say. Over the next 12 months, we plan to invest in about 3, 4, maybe even 5 studios, and in about 10 to 15 startups coming out of the studios, for a total of 15 million euros. For the beginning, we consider studios that have been around for some time, like 3 to 10 years, that have built some companies, like 10, maybe 15 companies already. And these companies should generate an aggregate of like 10 million euro in annual recurring revenue or so. This may change over time, but this is kind of a sweet spot for us for the beginning. We also look for some specific secret sauce. We like narrow niches, and we like very structured operations, basically, which is where most of the studios value comes from. Here you see the main numbers defining the syndicate's operations. From the investor's perspective, it's a no commitment and no membership fee opportunity to see about, I would say, 20 deals a year that we personally invest in. So syndicate members are able to join these deals with tickets starting from 3,000 euros, sometimes even 1,000 euro, and pay about half the cost compared to investing through a typical venture fund. Another important feature here is optional liquidity. As you all know, probably lots of investors don't want to be locked up for like 7 to 10 years. So with the foundation, investors will have an option to take the chips off the table potentially much faster. As you know, startups that can come out of studios, they come from seed to Series A in, I guess, in 72% of cases, and they do that about 40% faster compared to non-studio companies. So we're just going to leverage these advantages with the secondary features that are embedded into the Uniborn platform. Here is how you can apply to join the syndicate. We currently have about 100 members and just started to raise our first exceptionally interesting deal, by the way. That's going to be closed in about a couple of weeks, maybe 2 to 3 weeks. And so by launching the syndicate, we're kind of putting our own 2 cents to the ecosystem and trying to help to match great studio founders and their spin-out companies with the right investors. What we also do is we create, we host or co-host, let's say, in real life events with selected startup studio founders. And the first one will take place in just next week in Lisbon, where we'll have 5 studio founders and about 20 to 25 high-profile investors like family offices, wealth managers, private investors. We're almost packed for this particular one, but do plan to do a lot more in 2024 and beyond. But both the Syndicate and the in real life events are the options for a limited number of studios, of course. I mean, like, we cannot fundraise for all the studios in the world, even though most of them are amazing. So here is one more practical instrument that you, as a studio founder, can benefit from, no matter how far along you are. Yeah, so arranging club deals is super time consuming. Nobody likes it for a reason. But that's what I did multiple times for my previous startups, and I can say that there is real power that can be extracted if done right, of course. One thing that we see in most of these successful studios is that they have been building their investor network from day zero, sometimes even before launching a studio. This is what actually made every fundraising for their next company and basically for the studio itself so much easier and faster. So yeah, if I was running a studio, I would definitely think about this option. Yeah, so to start putting basically all your believers and potential angels into some single space where you can broadcast your new deals, you can communicate over these deals with the potential investors, and let these angels put their small tickets in your startups and maybe in your studio itself. There are basically two main reasons why you should do this on Uniborn and not on any other platform. And the first and the main one is that we are, as you probably know, are kind of big believers in Venture Studio as a model. So we spread this passion and we bring investors to the platform for a living. We do it for a living. So believe me, we deploy like all the resources that we have to do so. And we currently use the foundation kernel as a magnet. But when we invite these investors to the platform, they discover other syndicates. One of these can be yours, for example, and these investors can request to join the syndicates as well on the platform. So that's basically how you can attract more investors through the platform. This is basically how you can think of a Substack where you bring your own audience, and the platform Substack in this case brings your additional members kind of organically. And the second point is that it's just simply practical. It will cost you and your investors like 2 or 3 times less. And we do all the heavy lifting with creating an SPV, opening a bank account, accepting crypto if needed, generating and signing documents, tracking payments, administrating the SPV over the course of 8 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so basically this is the QR code or the link that you can use for requesting an invitation to the platform. And yeah, that's...
Thank you, Dmitry. Super. We'll meet some studios in Lisbon in 1 week, where I'm based. Yeah, so the next speaker is Quentin Nickmans, and there is a folk wisdom that if during the presentation of Quentin Nickmans you put a unicorn on your head, so this will create your opportunity to create a unicorn in the next 10 years. So because Quentin Nickmans is the founder of Hexa Studio with 3 unicorns created out of about 40 companies. Yeah, Quentin, please share your screen and start your presentation.
Thank you for the nice intro, Max. So first, congrats of having like 500 people interested on the studio model on a Zoom call by just using some social virality. You definitely have some talent to attract some people around the stuff. So congrats to you. Good to see all of you virtually and maybe physically if these events go on. Also, Dmitry, congrats on Uniborn. One of the companies we also launched, which I hope will be a unicorn, is doing quite the same, not specifically focused as a group to studios. It's called Roundtable, and it's indeed a platform that probably will help quite a lot of companies in Europe and probably all over in the world get easily funded. My objective today, as suggested by Max, was maybe not to present exactly whom and what Hexa is. I will do this, and I will be sure, but we're one of the older studios. It's like 12 years in that we started to build out the studio. So when we started the studio coin, the studio term was not yet coined. And so a little bit down the road, I wanted to share what animates us to continue to build 12 years in, because building, as you all know, is demanding, is also exhausting. And so every company needs to find its way to grow into the timeline, to continue to find its energy. And that is what I want to share, why eFounders, our original name, changed into Hexa, and what also it means, and how we found out we think we can continue to scale this model within one firm. Maybe as a first introduction on Hexa itself, we're a studio focused on B2B software. We just want to work with great founders. That I think it's been said, we have just one job as a studio founders and studio operators, is to work with the best, and we just accompany them. We have a period of about 12 months. We have a team of about 20 people. We work hand in hand with these people to build these ideas into companies. After 12 months, we're fully independent, no strings attached, financed by venture capital industry, completely independent out of us, except that we remain on board capitalistically, so we as shareholders, and we wait for the company to fully exit. We did that 40 times over the time being now. Indeed, there are 3 unicorns that are already coined out of our studio, and together portfolio valuation exceeds now well above 5 billion. It creates also a lot of jobs, and I think everyone needs to be proud of that. Entrepreneurship is also about creating jobs and helping people having a great journey into their life working at a startup. Now, what we did over the last months was really to reflect how and why a studio can build out its reputation and to continue to build on a success flywheel. I think Alper, you said it also. We are trying to be vocal on the studio model, because the most important stuff is that we all build a strong brand. A strong brand to attract and to work with the best founders. If you work with the best founders on a not too stupid idea, the outcome will be great. If you work on a brilliant idea with a not so good founder, the outcome will not be great. So the number one reason we need to be ambassadors of the studio model is to explain that it's a way of entrepreneurship in team that is as good as if you're not doing it within the studio. And over time, with the reputation and success we have built a strong brand, and I can be proud to say that today we work with really brilliant people compared to when I started 10 years ago. The second one is you build out a deep network of companies, clients that want to test trial your initial ideas, and obviously fundraising gets more facilitated over time. Over time, you will build more tier 1 based companies, and you will retain a large ownership enough to be successful. And secondly, you have a strong performance financially that will attract more experts to work with you on building the next big companies, right? This is a real flywheel that we've seen happening specifically after 7 or 8 years maturity. It takes time to build out reputational business. Sometimes when people ask me, it's like, why do the best consultants go work for McKinsey, BCG, and Bain & Company? Well, these companies have built iconic brands all over the world where the best talents for consultants wants to work for these companies. It's about the same in our type of industry. It's a brand-based, reputational-based companies. Now, once you've said that and you have a brand, you have access to brilliant founders, how can you scale it? Right? Can we be able, as a studio, to build more than a little number of companies that comes out of the studio every year? And this is where it's really not straightforward. I mean, everyone who's been doing the studio model for now knows that operationally launching 3, 4, 5 companies is craftsmanship. We can have a process, we can have a map like Alper you've shown. These are just steps we need all to go through, but you can't automate, and it's all about our time, our passion, our intensivity to work with co-founders to build it to success, right? We are repetitive founders that work with others to lead to success. And that, what we've experienced over now a good time having done it, it's a studio founder, a studio partner can probably manage efficiently not more than 3 to 4 projects per annum. He needs to be very much involved, close to his different founders, and to be in a real close squad, dedicated to build with them for a period of 12 months, not taking care of anything else than building with these people. We also know probably the best startup studios are specialized. The partner is specialized in a certain vertical. You can be good at building software as a service companies, but in the fintech, it's completely different than when you do in Web3. It's completely different than when you do it in the healthcare sector. You need to know these dynamics. You need to know how to sell into it. You need to understand what are the pitfalls to go into yes or no. I think everyone will admit that whenever you have a building out an expertise, it's also much easier to attract talent in that expertise. Exceptional founders are a limited resource. You want to orient them into a project that is really adapted to them. And lastly, in our model, financing a number of companies costs money. It can be very attractive as a model when companies are very good performing. But if you build out 10 companies a year that become average, we are still in the venture capital industry. There are no average returns in venture capital. Either it's a huge success, or it's a company that will not make a lot of money, and you're better off not doing it. It's the flywheel. It's to fly to quality that exists. So when you put all this on a map, a studio model is not easy to scale. You cannot raise bigger funds easily just to make not 3 projects or 5 projects a year, and going to 30 is not an easy one. And we think we've cracked a model or way to do it on our side. Is that's why we rebranded also in Hexa, is that we now partner with people that instead of building their own studio, which takes a lot of time to attract talent, etc., and to build out a reputation, just come and do it with us, right? And they are areas of expertise of these people. They bring it. We always remain doing B2B SaaS with them, and they have a small squad and come build it with us. They will bring their experience as entrepreneurs in a certain vertical. They will bring in their expertise in a studio area that they will lead, right? They will bring the skills to transform their ideas into great software products, and obviously they will need to attract the founders that we will have in our network to work and build with them. What we will bring is obviously the leverage of our reputation is to bring brilliant founders. The second one, a team of experts that obviously are able to build good B2B SaaS businesses, and we'll support these venture partners as much as we can. We'll obviously leverage our network where out of reputation we trust a lot of investors, and they will get probably the same level of equity that if you get you're building your studio yourself. So that's about 7% direct equity stake of each startup we create. That will go directly to these partners that we work with. And that's what our next stop. Today, this week, we launched 2 new verticals, one specifically in health, another one also called Second Life, which is another specific model. So what we try to do scaling a startup studio is remain core to your roots, B2B SaaS for us, but explore into the different verticals with the expertise you really want to leverage. Our next stop is now to get a picture into 2030, which is about 7 years now, where from 4 to 5 projects a year, we ambition to try to launch about 30 companies a year, probably with 15 different partners and to 10 or more active verticals. So maybe we'll do another session in a couple of years to see if we succeeded on that. But in the meantime, that was the message I want to convey, saying hope it helps to reflect on how you can continue to grow your studio.
Super, Quentin. I will ask only one question because we are a bit late. So what are your proven techniques for validating B2B startup ideas? What's your playbook, schedule, and budget for this stage? Actually, we recorded recently a podcast episode with Quentin, and there are some types of answers for this question. But Quentin, please ask, what is your proven techniques for validating B2B startup ideas?
To validate our startup ideas, what we try to do is basically have 2 ingredients. We want to write it down in a short memo. That's basically what it needs to have. With a thesis, how the software will help it, if there's sufficient market, what's the business model, etc. Traditional stuff, I think, that is out there. And the second thing is, before we match or we share that to any founder, we need to have mock-up, right? We need to have a mock-up, which is, it needs to be wireframe. We need to know, as co-founders into the project, what it would look like as a software piece that we want to build. And I think that is the real fundamental discussion we then have with the other founders, saying, with our co-founders, saying, do you want to build this with us? What are your comments on it? Where are you at ease with? What are the hypotheses with what you're not at ease with? And the collaboration starts.
Super. Thank you very much, Quentin.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Now we continue with my short presentation. First of all, I would like to say to all of you, thank you that you supported this conference. We see a record number of people here. We bought a version of Zoom to let all people be here today. And do you know how many registrations we got? So there is a number. I checked it something like 3 hours ago. 1,150 applications. Thank you very much. And this impulse of this research on venture studios I published, it not only made it possible to hold this conference, but also it not only made us possible to create this investment syndicate for venture studios and invite great speakers to today's conference, to my venture studio podcast, but also I think it's a great opportunity to collaborate. And I'm presenting a venture studio community, which is called Venture Studio Family, for startup studios, venture builders, and whether these are established studios, new studios, or aspiring studio founders. So how does it work? First of all, 2 times a month we have calls. One call is for questions and challenges studio founders have. For example, I don't know how to collaborate with this founder because he wants to take 50% of equity, but I want to attract 2 founders. So whatever challenges do you have in your studios, we can discuss there, 1 call a month. Second is for sharing best practices. For example, for the next 3 months, we'll have 3 topics to discuss. How to attract the best possible founders, because it is the #1 problem of all venture studios. When I talk to founders of studios, they say that, oh, we are struggling with attracting great founders. Today we'll have one speaker who will share how to attract 60% of founders with exits to their startups. So, second topic, revenue streams for a studio. Many studios struggle with cash flow. We'll discuss and share best practices inside the community. The third is fundraising into a studio and fund. Many studios struggle with fundraising either when they're launching their studio or when they raising into the funds, especially during this VC winter, it is difficult. I want to say that while preparing for this online conference, we got many messages from Asia in Australia that they wanted to visit us, but it wasn't possible because of time zones. So we decided to do 2 times available for this community. So one will be for Americas, North America, South America, for maybe Europe and Africa can join. And another time will be for Asia and Australia, and Europe and Africa also can join, so they can choose the best suitable time for everyone. But the most interesting part I want to tell is family values, and the concept of studio is to have 3 rituals for this community. The first is no secrets inside the family, so we share numbers, and we have 1 ritual every call, so every participant can choose whether to join calls once a month or 2 times a month. And the small ritual is to share 1 number, like what is your equity split? How much money do you pay to your entrepreneurs in residence before incorporation? What is the size of your team? How much money do you invest in a startup? And different numbers regarding studios. How much time does it take from the inception of company to the first revenue? This is why it is important, because we understand it much better when we know numbers than when we just give abstract conversation. We have abstract conversations. And what I experienced many times while recording podcast episodes with studio founders, that after we stop recording, people are ready to share more numbers and more stories that are not ready to share publicly. And sometimes I think, oh, wow, this is like you completely understand the studio in different way when you know numbers of it. So I believe it is crucial to understand numbers of studios, and we have this ritual in the community. The second is sharing inside the family documents, playbooks, decks. So when you need a studio founder agreement or a studio investor agreement or financial model or how to validate ideas, how to generate ideas. So we have this ritual every 3 months to gather all requests, all inquiries about documents needed by studios in the community. And we create this document pool. And so all studios could get access. So 1 contribution per quarter is the second ritual. The third is the scarcest resource, maybe one of the scarcest resources, is investors who understand and are optimistic about venture studio model. So what we plan to do is to hold every 6 months a special online event. Maybe there will be also some offline event where every studio can attract 1-day investor and get access to many investors. So we can educate together those investors, we can bring, and we can share the scarcest resources. So like in the family, all the best your attraction to your relatives. So the same culture will be built in this community. And of course, like a family, we have to partner and be friendly with family offices. So this will be the part. So we'll do our best to attract as many family offices as possible to the community, to these events. Because probably family offices are one of the most popular ways to fund your startup studio. But the quality and actually the value of community is the value of your peers. Here are some studios who approved their participation in this community. We are starting in December. So Founders Factory, they launched more than 100 startups as a studio and also invested in more than 300 startups around the world, 4 continents. Rainmaking, recently they sold their APAC business to Bain & Company, and they created value for $5 billion of their valuation of their companies. OSS Ventures, reached 22 million ARR in 4 years. So it is the next studio to be presented here at our online conference. So all of these are studios participating here, and you can get advice from very experienced studios. You can see Fisher Venture Builder delivered 50x returns to their first investors. So if you go to this community and you attract one investor to our event in 6 months, so you convince your investor, look here, there are studios who who delivered 50x returns to their investors. Yeah, and 1 minute now for you. I'll put this link into the chat, so you can just go and put your email here. Yeah, and then in the next week we'll onboard new members. So now are the best possible conditions to join. Yeah, I will send it several times so that no one will spam it in this special moment. Yeah, thank you very much. It's no-brainer to join. The next speaker is Renan Devillieres from OSS Ventures. The short question for you: what do you think is the number of founder applications they get every year? Like, put in the chat. Maybe someone saw my podcast, but just guess. What number of applications from founders do they get? And Renan will answer. So I saw 1,200, 500, 900. Yeah. So Renan, your word, and please share your screen. Sure. If you have.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, everyone. Very glad to be sharing your journey with you. I'll be sharing my screen. Let me check that. All right. You should be able to see my screen. Can you? Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, Max. So I'm going to try and share you our journey here at OSS Venture in 10 minutes. We are a verticalized venture builder, and we are almost 4 years old. We will be in a few months. So before talking about venture building and all that good things, I just want to tell you about the market that we are operating in. So the market that we are operating in is operations. And so what is operations? Operations is everyone working in an environment where in the morning you put a hard hat, or you put gloves, or you put like security boots. You work in a factory, you work in a warehouse, you work in supply chain, you work on a ship, you work in a mine, and you work to deliver you the goods and services that you have. It's 25% of the world GDP. And it's 0.7% of startups and startup funding. And it's 40% of CO2 emission. So it's a massive market. And it's one of the least touched by technology and innovation and everything. But then Tesla arrived. And Tesla is doing to the world of operations and manufacturing what Apple did to Nokia. They are showing that if you put software in physical operations, then you can just change the way it is operating. I don't know how many of you have ever got in a Tesla, but it's basically a computer with wheels. In their factories, it's the same, meaning that there is a lot of software in their operations. And so I made that realization because beginning of 2019, I had been a factory director for 8 years. And then I had co-founded a tech startup located between San Francisco and Rio de Janeiro. And I had just exited. And I visited the Tesla Fremont factory and I said, oh my God, software is going to take over the world of operations. I'm going to be an investor in startups operating for operations. Like that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to be back in Europe, and it's going to be awesome. And so I did what every nerd would do, and I called 400 startups. And several months later, I realized that my plan sucked. And here is why. There is a reason why only 0.7% of startups are operating in operations. It's a very hard market. It's a very hard market to understand. It's also a market where sales cycles are very long. So it's very long to find product market fit, because if you want to iterate 6 times, when you have to iterate once every 6 months, you're dead before finding product market fit. There is also an allocation problem. The best tech founders typically don't go to operations. They go to fintech, they go to SaaS, they go to those kind of things. And the best tech founders, they don't know about the world of operations. And people from the world of operations, they don't know tech. So they don't create scaling companies. And so I said, oh, snap. I had gained some money and I wanted to be an investor, but that plan sucks. And so I started reading and coding my smartest friends, and eFounders was a huge inspiration for me. Hexa. Soto Venture was a huge inspiration. And so that is how we iterated our way on to the studio model. So I didn't create a studio because I wanted to create a studio. I created a studio because I wanted to see tech startups operating in the world of operations, and that wasn't happening for very good reasons. And so I said, okay, the studio is the best way of getting that technology in the world of operations. So I wrote a blog post with some fun, some jokes, and some thesis explaining it all, and we got started. So we are almost 4 years later. We started 19 companies. We launched 15. Out of the 15, there are 8 Series A. The companies are doing a total of 24 million ARR combined. Sorry, Max, the numbers were from 2 months ago. The startup that we co-created deployed in 1,200 factories over the world, and less than 10 factories stopped using the service. So we can say 4 years in that it's encouraging. So how did we get there, and what did we learn along the way? On the first day, the one question that started obsessing me was why a studio has a right to exist. Why an exceptional founder, like a world-class founder, a Superman or Iron Man, or like, why would she or he choose to work with a studio? And why would a studio be working in an environment that has structural barriers to entry? And that started to obsess me, the concept of studio. And so the question that I started asking myself was, why would each new startup be easier, better, faster to create than the previous one? So with that in mind, of course, we created some processes. I'm not going to go into the details of the processes. We source directly ideas from factories. I have a team of 20 people. They go to factories. They understand pain points. We have designers. We have coders. We get jazz. We have the step, gate, process, and everything. That's the 7th iteration. Of course, we are iterating, but I would say that this is just trying to create good products, right? The other thing that we have, obviously, is a team, a world-class team with all the areas covered: product, technology, growth, people, and finance. So we have the basics, but what I think is different in a verticalized venture builder is what we call the repeatable assets. So the repeatable assets are assets that are not dependent on people, and that make it so that each passing startup is easier, faster, better to launch than the previous one. So the first big asset is the commercial network. So every single startup is sharing its commercial deal flow. The growth team inside of OSS is nurturing partnerships with factories and with COOs and with prospects and everything. And so today we have a big network of factories all over the world. And maybe more importantly, we have 80 design partners. So design partners are factories, factory directors, and we can call them and say, look, we want to launch this. Do you think it's a good idea? And if yes, can you dedicate someone from your team to co-build with us and to iterate each week on the different iterations of the idea of the product we have? And so that is adding each passing week. And so we have that commercial network. What this does is solving the cold start problem and the speed of iteration problem in our vertical, which is very hard to penetrate. The second repeatable asset that we have is what we call the tech-based project. So it's code that has roughly 70-80% of everything you can expect in a SaaS or in a SaaS-enabled marketplace. So it's about login, it's about data, it's about link with existing systems, big ERPs, and blah, blah, blah. And so it's equivalent to 9 months of a small team of coders. And there were more than 90 pen tests, penetration testing that were done on that stack. And they passed with flying color. So what it does is that it's very much easier to integrate with the systems of the factories, of the real estate, of the supply chain and everything. And what this does is speed up the time to development and ease along the way the growing pains that any tech founder can have trying to create software that will be used in a very demanding environment, which is operations. The third repeatable asset is the research database. So I'm a former factory director, so I love processes. I love repeatability and I love smoothness. And so it's been now close to 4 years that every single time anyone from my team speaks with anyone from a factory, it is recorded and there is a transcript and you can search the transcript and there are tags. And so if you want to know about a certain topic in a factory, in ships, in real estate, and whatever, you can search and get literally 20 to 50 hours of content, real life content on certain topics. This research database also, we look at it to look for trends. For example, the topic of energy management that we launched a company on last year, the topic of energy management went like times 9, I think, in our research database from 1 year to another. And it went times 9 in certain segment. And so we said, okay, there is something done here. So that's the research database. And of course, the last one of the repeatable assets is the team benchmarks, the playbook, the brand. But I would say that this is expected for a venture builder to be learning and creating playbook and benchmark out of its experience. But in our mind, at least, to rely a little less on individual performance and star product designers or growth manager, we need to have those repeatable assets. And so that is what enabled us to kind of repeatedly create companies and tech products that meet their match. So the deal that we have with the founder is very simple. We invest roughly 500K for any given startup. 400K is the salary of the team, and 100K is hard cash put in the company. We take 20%, 25% of the company at the very start. And our goal is to get them to $500,000 in recurring revenue license fees in their first year of existence. We achieved that in 2023, 75% of the time. At the year 5, what we would like is for companies to reach 10 million ARR, which is compatible with Series B, C, blah, 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 blah. And so far, we are kind of proving that. So the concept of repeatable assets and very unfair access to a market that is huge, but that not a lot of people know of, and that startups have a hard time to penetrate, make it so that we have a unique position. And that unique position is towards manufacturer in one hand and also towards founders. So towards manufacturer, the discourse is now very simple. So please meet Gregory. Gregory is a factory director. He's 43. He's very smart. He has 500 direct reports. And he found us via content. So we have a lot of content saying this is the future of technology in manufacturing, blah, 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 blah. And we say to him, okay, let's go to your factory. Let's look for pain points. Let's start cooperating with you. And why does he want to work with OSS and with the founders? He wants to work with OSS and the founders because he knows that tech is revolutionary, but he knows that he doesn't have the skills internally. And he knows that he wants to get promoted, and it's a good way to get promoted. On the other hand, we have Mehdi. So Mehdi is one of our latest founders. Mehdi is a former Rocket Internet, where he created 6 marketplaces. He's a former COO of Flixbus, a well-known bus marketplace in Europe. And he founded a company called Alper that raised 10 million VC money. It's a huge success, and he exited. So literally, this guy is probably like better than me, better than anyone in the team on so many levels. He also doesn't really need anyone for his next venture because he can raise money. He can do anything. So why does he work with OSS? He works with OSS because it's an unfair set of assets to launch that company. And so that's how we attract those founders. Just a last word, which is that we are 4-year-old. So the first 2 years, we are self-funded by the company where we prove traction in markets. The next 2 years, we are proving numbers and repeatability. And our goal is in the next 2 years to prove exits and having hard cash on that. So yeah, that's our journey.
Thank you, Renan. I will answer. I don't remember. Did you say that you get 8,000 of applications?
Yeah, 8K.
From founders every year?
We received 8K, of which I would say 400 are very, very high quality, like second-time founders, people having exited companies and everything.
Yeah, and also one number is like 60% of founders had previous exits. So it proves that like Studio could have some great value proposition to attract even founders with previous exits. How do you make deep connections with COO management to cooperate on your ideas and companies? Conferences, personal contacts, cold outreach, what works best?
So we have 2 very, very different circles. One circle is the design partners. The design partners are so valuable and so important because they need to have the right mindset. They need to be entrepreneurial and be okay with failure and everything. And so those we nurture very humanly. Like it's my CRO GP spending a lot of time with them. We physically do meetings with them. We have private events with them. So we nurture that very small community of design partners. And then you have the other circle, which is all the clients of all the startups of OSS. And this is very digital. So for example, we created Industry, which is one of the largest community of factory directors in Europe. And nobody knows, but it's OSS that created it. And so we nurture that second circle digitally to do cross states. But the first circle is really managed at a very human touch, non-scalable level. But 8 design partners is all we need to create new companies.
Super. Thank you, Renan. For all people, I recommend watching also our podcast episode on my page. You can find it on post on my YouTube channel. So thank you again. The next speaker is Elliott Parker. Elliott Parker. Please share your screen. So High Alpha Innovation actually is a studio from another studio, High Alpha. So in 2015, am I right? 2015, yeah. High Alpha High Alpha started launching startups together with entrepreneurs, and then and also like investing in companies. And then one of the companies is High Alpha Innovation, which partners with corporations. Yeah, please, Elliott, your time.
Yeah, so it says host disabled participant screen sharing. I may have logged in as a participant, not a presenter. So I can't share my screen.
Okay, maybe.
Let me just say while we're sorting out the tech stuff, there it goes. This is amazing, Max. Congrats to you in pulling this group together. So much opportunity in this group right here. So much potential. It's really amazing. Grateful to be part of it. So yeah, High Alpha Innovation. I'll give the story. We partner with corporations, universities, world-class founders to launch startups. And before I jump into it, I'll flash my contact info up here. I've kind of given up on email at this point. I just can't keep up. I'm really bad at it. If you want to get a hold of me, try DM on Twitter. It might be a good way to do it. You can see our website and Twitter handle for our company on there too. So I'm going to be brief and try and maximize our time for questions. So try and do maybe a minute per slide here. But High Alpha began as a venture studio back in 2015 and started out as a studio with a venture fund, High Alpha Studio plus High Alpha Capital. Over time, our studio has launched 40 plus companies at this point, invested in 100 deals out of the venture fund. And between studio funds and companies we've launched, raised over $500 million, over 1,000 people employed in companies that have started out of High Alpha Studio, which is amazing. In 2020, we launched High Alpha Innovation, in part driven by the question that Quentin raised also around how do you scale a venture studio? A venture studio, a single studio can launch a set number of companies per year. As you all know, in venture, it's power law returns to some degree, and the bigger and broader your portfolio, the more likely you are to trip into those unicorns. We spun out High Alpha Innovation in 2020 with the idea that we wanted to explore what it looked like to scale a venture studio, and specifically to go partner with corporations, universities, and others to do it as a way to source ideas, get access to more capital, develop deeper domain expertise that would help us launch companies and additional studios. So at High Alpha Innovation, which I run, we co-create advantage startups is what we say. We partner with universities, corporations, and increasingly, surprisingly to me, governments to build startups, and in some cases to build new venture studios with those partners. We try to make sure that the startups have some type of advantage when they launch that enables them to get to bigger outcomes faster than a typical average startup would. We try to build companies that we believe can get to $1 billion exits. So we're focused on really big, important problems, working with these corporations, universities who often come in as investors, first customers, distribution partners, helpers in one way or another. 4 reasons we found why corporations, specifically universities to a degree, like to partner with venture studios. Number 1, they have a business problem in their business that they cannot solve easily. Sometimes startup can be a better way to go address that problem. A startup outside the corporation in particular can do things that the corporation cannot, can learn quickly, can go solve that problem in a way that is not an expense, but actually generates a return. Number 2, their customers have problems. If those problems could be solved, those customers would be better customers for the corporation. But the opportunity may be strategically misaligned or in conflict in some way with their core business. We can go build a startup and work with the corporation for distribution and credibility, go solve those customer problems. Number 3, strengthen the ecosystem. In some instances, you've got a market where you've got big corporate players involved. Something, if it existed in the ecosystem, everybody would be better off. But if any one player were to go launch that thing, no one else would participate. And particular competitors wouldn't. So we go build startups into these ecosystems with the cooperation of these large corporations to make sure that the startups are able to get a foothold and succeed. And sometimes, number 4, is just about learning. They see disruption coming in some way or opportunities coming some way. Startups are fantastic experiment engines. They're a great way for established organizations to learn a lot and to learn really quickly. So we can go build a startup as a form of a cheap experiment to go learn really quickly. Our team is a unique mix, about 40 people. A good number of the team, half a dozen of us used to work at a consulting firm founded by a guy named Clayton Christensen, who is an expert in innovation, came up with the idea of the innovator's dilemma, disruptive innovation theory, which is embedded into the way that we think about how to build startups. We've got a bunch of people on the team with startup venture experience as well. We kind of cross those two worlds, the ability to work with large organizations, the ability to build venture backable external startups and to understand how to scale those businesses and make sure they succeed. When we launch new startups, we're trying to, as I said, launch them with advantages. And for us, that means a few specific things you see here. It's about embedding from launch customers into these businesses. So one of the criteria we have for launching a company is it's got to have first 100,000 in revenue lined up before we launch, ideally have line of sight to first customers. We put capital into the businesses at launch, typically $1 to $2 million at launch. That's most often coming from the corporations, the universities we partner with, although occasionally from other investors. We do not inject capital from High Alpha Innovation in businesses. We don't have a fund as a strategic decision that we made not to do that, which I can get into if anybody wants to know. We endow these startups with credibility through their association with High Alpha Innovation, as well as with a large corporation or university. We give the founders lots of coaching and help and try to enable them to go faster. And importantly, if you're a founder working in one of our startups, you're part of a pretty significant community that's building together, going through similar stages, similar challenges, oftentimes even selling to similar customers. And so there's a lot of help in the community. So that being a founder is a very lonely job. Can be, and we try to fix that. Here's a snapshot of companies we've launched over the last couple of years. These are just the ones out of High Alpha Innovation, as mentioned. We are maybe 40 launches to date. High Alpha Innovation, another 20-ish, for a total of 60 companies launched over the last 8 years. Each of these in the last couple of years launched with a corporate or university partner, which you can see here. The plan is to launch another 15 to 20 companies in the next 18 months. So what's interesting, as we've partnered with corporations, universities to go build these individual startups, the model works well. It helps people access innovation that would otherwise be difficult to access. It helps build stronger ecosystems and so on. Lots of benefits for the organizations that participate with us. And we find that a lot of these organizations are now working with us to launch dedicated venture studios. So we've got a few studios that we built in partnership with others that are up and running. Expect to launch several more studios next year. Each of those studios has a specific theme and a partner who was deeply engaged in working with us to make it happen. And with that, I'll flash my contact info back up. Happy to walk through case study. If helpful, any specific questions around cap table structure, all the usual things. Happy to answer any of those.
Thank you, Elliott. The question is, how did you approach your first university partner or client from Amber?
Yeah, first university approached us, and that's been kind of the case to date. That was a big surprise to us when we created High Alpha Innovation in early 2020. Our plan was to go work exclusively with corporations and to help them unlock some of that balance sheet capital they have to drive innovation through investment in external startups. And then within a few months, first university to reach out to us was the University of Wisconsin here in the U.S. Their endowment was looking for ways to enhance the quality. And so first university approached us, and that was the way we got started working with universities, was working with a university endowment, running an experiment to see if we could launch higher quality startups than the university was putting out on its own. Universities are really good at getting new ventures to a launch decision. A university is not designed to do everything that happens afterwards. And as we all know, getting to a launch decision is the easy part.
Another question from Diana Lizage. Do you pay entrepreneurs in residence, or how does funding for EIRs work as part of the budget for building a venture?
Yeah, generally we run a few different models depending on the partnership, depending on the studio that someone's working in. But usually our approach is to bring in founders at the point where an idea is starting to take shape prior to a launch decision. And those founders come in when the business starts. They are able to earn a salary as soon as that company goes. Our default is to push ideas into businesses as early as we can. Lots of studios run a model where we might incubate farther inside the studio. We've learned over time that for us, the best model is to put the idea in the hands of a well-incentivized entrepreneur as quickly as possible, provide them support, and as fast as we move in the studio, entrepreneurs with good incentives can move infinitely faster. So the goal is to get them in. Occasionally, we'll work with EIRs where we've got an idea that requires some additional validation, and we'll bring in an EIR, and always in a paid engagement to do that.
My last question is, can you tell about the structure of equity when you partnering with corporations? So you tell it on the podcast episode, but I think it's very interesting for all.
Yeah, it's good. We've learned how to do this over time through experimentation. Generally, the equity model, when we think about setting up these companies, you've got a few different inputs that have claim on the equity. You've got the capital that's going into the business. You've got the support, usually in the form of the studio, us. You've got the founders who are there at launch, and you've got the future employees that are going to be hired into the business. Each of those has a claim on the equity. So we think about that. We also think about these startups needing to raise venture capital, typically 12 months after launch. And so we design the cap table to make sure we can attract high-quality investors, high-quality founders. And what we found to be the sweet spot for us when we're doing this with corporations or universities is that we're 20% on the cap table. Corporation universities typically coming in with the capital is taking 20 to 25% on that cap table. And the remainder goes to the founding team and future hires. Our goal is to make sure the founders are at 51% or greater. We found that to be important for them to be able to access more funding in the form of grants or venture capital down the road.
Super. Elliott, thank you that joined us today. All chats we will try to save and then in some way share because there are a lot of contacts. But please, let's do it now, last time. So all links you want to put, all your LinkedIn profiles, just put it last time, and then we'll have to go to the next speaker because it's very distracting, I think, for many people. Next time we will actually create some question box, special box, because it's very difficult to see at all questions and find them in this chat. I got this message. If you can see it. This message is entertain. So I heard one idea of Alper, Celen, and I have some entertaining for you because before our next speaker joins. So actually, I didn't work in, how to say this, circus. I didn't work there, but I.
Now you're going to make me look for my juggling balls.
Yeah, but I have some instructions, so entertain. Okay. Yeah, the next speaker is Rasmus Rothe. And before he joins and starts sharing his presentation, I want to ask you to put in the chat. So they attracted, in 2016, they started to do AI venture studio. And before it became mainstream AI. And what they attracted 10 million euro into their studio, holding company. And then in several years, they raised 30 million euro fund. So my question to you is, what do you think was valuation of their studio when they initially raised 10 million from scratch? So it was in 2016. So just put one number, what was the valuation? And then if Rasmus is ready to share, because he shared it on my podcast, so he'll say the right answer. Yeah, please, Rasmus, share your screen and we'll see some guesses here in chat.
Let me share 1 sec. Thanks for the invite, and great to see such a big turnout here at the session today. Yeah, super exciting, and obviously also all your stunts in between. Really love them. I think this is been the most entertaining moderation I've had for a long time on Zoom, or I guess ever. So thanks for doing this. So actually, we raised the 10 million at 48 million back then. So I think some numbers were closer, some were a bit further away. I guess also keeping in mind that 2016 there was probably also less AI hype than we have today. So probably today you could raise this at a much higher valuation. Maybe before, I have a couple of slides, but I also would love to use the time to answer some questions. So I'll probably keep the presentation a bit shorter than the 10 minutes. Maybe quickly on the journey. So personal background in AI research. Basically, when we started 2016, I was really intrigued by bringing more AI into the real world. And my co-founder as well, who's been a serial entrepreneur for a few decades. And we basically said, okay, like how can we kind of bridge the gap between what's happening in research and AI and kind of all these interesting applications you could build. And then basically started to work on some individual projects for customers, also started on our own product ideas. And I think it was never basically the idea to start it as a venture studio. But then basically when we were like 1 or 2 years in, we realized, okay, what are we actually building as a venture studio? And then basically put much more structure to it. And so fast forward now, we are basically investing and as a venture studio in AI first companies and building them from scratch. And I think what I want to talk about today is kind of the concept of ecosystem and that being a big edge for venture studios. And to explain that, basically, I want to give you a bit of an overview how we're structured. So basically, on the one hand, there's capital we're investing. Current vehicle 30 million. Next one will be a bit bigger, as on the slides. And that's one part. That's really like the investing part. So early stage investing in AI first companies in a studio structure. But the unique thing that we've been building up is quite some ecosystem of players within the Merantix, family that basically support the venture building, but are themselves businesses. And so the two main pillars are one, Merantix Momentum, an AI services business, and the AI campus in Berlin. And both those businesses actually got started from quite naturally. So we basically, when we started to build first companies, 2016, 2017, 2018, at some point realized, okay, there's a lot of companies we're building, but we're also working with some corporations on AI applications. Let's put that actually in its own company. And then also we had all our companies actually co-located. And we said, look, why don't we actually have also other companies be co-located? And that's basically how Merantix Momentum and the AI Campus were born. I want to explain a bit what they are, and then later kind of tie it to the kind of venture studio structure. So the AI Campus, if you're ever in Berlin, is probably the most vibrant place for AI in terms of certain metrics in Europe. It's actually now above 100 companies already that are working on AI applications, from big Fortune 500 companies, the big tech companies like the Volkswagens, SAPs, Amazon of the world, but also many startups, some scale-ups, some investors, some policymakers, researchers. And it's ultimately a co-working space. I mean, we see as we work, I guess now that this is not a scalable venture case, but it's certainly like a run as a business. We have our own team of 7 people. It's profitable. People pay rent. But the point is basically to bring together all these AI companies under one roof for them to be able to work with each other. And a bunch of those are obviously our own portfolio companies, but there are also many others. And that actually creates a lot of synergies, not just in terms of knowledge exchange, in terms of people learning from each other, but also the opportunity to do business with each other. And it's very active community. So, I mean, we organize a couple of events there, but in total, there's actually 250 plus events happening this year, from paper discussion groups over vertical AI focused events, over policy discussions, over knowledge exchange on the tech stack and all kinds of other things. So it's very vibrant. And also I invite you all, if you're ever in Berlin, want to work a few days from the campus, you're all happily invited. So we also keep it very much like an open house. When people are, week in Berlin, have done meetings, need a place to work from, they come to the campus. And that ultimately also connects our community very much to kind of the outside world. And that in itself is run as its own business with its own objective. But as we're the 100% shareholder, we obviously can also benefit from it. And this is very beneficial for our founders to generate new ideas, to meet customers, to hire talent. And it's one of these, platform elements we've built. The second one is our AI services company, Merantix Momentum, that actually 95% works for external customers. So big Fortune 500, SMEs, startups, even governments. And the interesting part is that itself is a business. It's growing a lot. It's probably going to be a company of hundreds, maybe thousands of people in a few years. And there's a market for more customized AI solutions also very big. But obviously, there's on the one hand like a 5%, part where they actually work for some of our early portfolio companies and support them in building up. And at the same time, they were really deep industry relationships. So I mean, it's all nice to know, the head of AI of a big company and have coffee with them. But obviously, you have a much deeper relationship when you kind of work very deeply with them over some AI projects, and kind of they also know Merantix as kind of the overarching organization as a trusted party. And so we see this as the way as it scales, and as it's a business, it can also scale to kind of build these deep industry relationships, both to have these kind of partners we can then kind of go into as design partners for distribution for our companies, as well as also generate new ideas where we could build like product ventures. And we believe this kind of ecosystem approach is much more scalable, because ultimately both are companies, both can grow, and the bigger they are, the more they benefit also the venture building side of things. And as such, it's also not like that the management fee of the fund has to pay for any of these organizations, because they're self-sustaining businesses. And that's, I guess, how we, can then leverage that for our studio. When we have founders, we have a lot of founders applying to the campus. We have a lot of also talent generally applying for our companies. Actually, it's been like last year, like more than 1,000 founders that applied, and or a few thousand, I guess, even. And then there's only a very small part we actually hire and bring in and build companies with. There's more than 100,000 people like just going through the AI campus every year. So that obviously also creates a lot of connections. And then on the ideation side, because we see this Merantix momentum, these services projects, that also through the events and everything, we also see a lot of like business cases, early stage founders ideating that we can ultimately leverage for our venture studio. The other trick is we try to build traction very early onwards for the companies. So we generally, when we work with founders, usually they come on site to us. We ideate with them a couple of days. Then if we like them, we bring them on for 4 weeks. We look at 4 different cases over 4 weeks. And then if that goes well, we go with them in a very deep dive phase where we try to go and ultimately land 2-3 customers at pre-commit revenue contractually. And with that, then incubate the companies. And that traction is, I think, quite good, because it ultimately, de-risks it for the investor, but also for the founder to not build on something that, actually might not have product market fit. And in return, the corporates trust us because, they might already be on the campus or have had a touch point there, or they had worked with our service business. So we start to grow this ecosystem that pretty much for any industry, whether it's like in the industrial space, if it's banks, insurances, government, there's some companies we know, there's always 5-10 first customers we can reach out to, and then with them validate our ideas, but then also get this traction. And then also through the campus, I guess there's also like quite a strong investor network that we tie into the campus, but that obviously can also leverage for our companies. And that's ultimately the advantage also for the founders. So we tend to have, on the one hand, really good AI researchers joining us that see us as the ones that can help them to bring the first customers, that help them to bring the right domain experts and on board. We have many people that relocate. So we have a lot of founders from North America that came to Europe and kind of see us as not just an investor, but somebody who can also help them as customers and early talent to our platforms. And then we have a lot of domain expertise who see huge challenges in the industry and want to build a company there. And then we can help them to find the right co-founder on the AI side. And generally, we're industry agnostic. We tend to build more vertical AI businesses. Most of our founders actually are either serial entrepreneur or have, deep expertise in a certain industry. So, and funnily, actually, they also often see even more the value. So if somebody's built a company before, they know how hard it is. So they also see how much value this can bring if somebody, can bring you a couple of first customers, or, with the people on the campus or the service company can help you to validate something from a technical perspective. From a deal perspective, we invest €1 million. We take around 27% for that, some common, some preferred shares. And so that basically then get the company ready that 12 months later, they can raise a seed round of a couple of million euros. In terms of companies, just an overview we run 60% of the National Breast Cleaning Program. We have Cambrium, a poultry materials company. There's data using computer vision and manufacturing, Brink in the ESG space, Lux, virtual try-on, Ovum in the fertility space, Adera, mental health. And then just last week, we started a new company in the AI litigation space. And there's a few more things we're working on. So we've been ramping up to now basically build around 4 companies a year. And with that, basically, yeah, I think we're comfortable to further scale it. And we see, even now, if I compare it now to 2 years ago with the campus and the service business, we see so crazy networks effects that we can build them up further. And so that's also, I guess, our model. Like our studio team is very small. It's as big as any other venture fund, because basically all these additional benefits we bring in the studio are its own operations. And that's kind of the key message I wanted to convey today. So with that, open for questions. Happy to go into any details or numbers. Max, I shared quite a few of that also on the podcast, so happy to share more of those.
Yeah, the question is, what is the skill set of the co-founding team in a startup, like CPO, CTO, CEO, or someone else?
Yeah, I think generally our founder teams are 2 people. We have also some with 3 people, actually. Ultimately, there needs to be somebody with a deep domain expertise. So in all these domains I just mentioned, there's somebody from the industrial space, from the biotech space, from the fintech space, and then usually one like technical co-founder that is basically very deep in the respective domain, and usually we tend to bring the domain experts first, and that's also what we've learned over the last couple of years. That there's obviously the whole foundation models, and then there's a lot of talk about thin layers on ChatGPT, and also with the recent OpenAI Dev Day, even more of that, I guess, will get disrupted. So we tend to go in these like deeper verticals where, ChatGPT, even with some better integrations, will not solve the problem, but you need to be in these very deep verticals. And that's obviously also harder. So you need specialized domain expertise, but that's why we like those people to actually apply, because we can bring everything else to the table. And through that, I think can also attract superior entrepreneurs.
Another question is, do you work with any outsourcing development firms to build your products faster, cheaper, or is your whole talent pool basically in-house?
No, we want to have the whole talent pool in the companies, also for the follow-up rounds. Like ultimately, everything needs to be in the ventures. It needs to look like any other venture. Like from the outside, people should not realize that it comes out of the studio. Like the more it looks like any other company that didn't come out of the studio, the better it is. That's kind of the KPI. That being said, we have some of our companies that have worked with a services company in the first couple of months. So when they hire, it takes some time to ramp up, or if they need support because something is urgent. But ultimately, they get decent, good rates from the service business, but we have that in-house. So we would not work with Merantix Momentum. So we would not work with external companies there.
One more short question is, what is the business model mix resource allocation between venture building and studio consulting model? So like between building and consulting, and are these the same people who are involved in both?
So the Merantix Momentum, the services business, the consulting business, is its own business with its own team, and ultimately we sit on the board. But it's we are the main shareholder, but it's its own company. So that's very separate from the studio fund team. And the studio fund team is very small. That's really about bringing the right founders on, now helping them to navigate and ideate, and then making an investment decision and then having them invest. And I think it's just not very scalable if we try to build a big team in the studio to support them. Plus, also for 99% of the questions, we are anyways not the best experts. So I rather want to build the structures that they can themselves go to the service business or connect through the AI campus to the right customers or experts to help them their problems, because that's much more scalable. Because if you want to build another 30, 40, 50 companies, it's impossible to work with them all with a studio team. It doesn't scale. So I'm much more focused on building these platforms.
Super. Thank you, Rasmus. Yeah, we should definitely.
If you have more question, connect on LinkedIn, send me a message. And if you're in Berlin, come by the AI campus, both to work for a couple of days as well as to join some events. And of course, if you know founders, join us.
Okay, so great. Our part with speakers is finished. I want to see 49 people here so that we can try to do something like, I would do something like, I don't know, all people who have this macOS feature, let's do it. Or maybe you just can put your, it doesn't work. Probably it should work. Yeah, something like this. So there are some people you can see here with this video effects. But before we go, so I want to tell you what will be next. So the first part is finished. Oh, I have something here. I have something here which is shock people. Probably most people didn't see all these messages when I just started my presentation, but yeah, I can show you again. So there were a lot of messages like make English mistakes. I did it very good today. Shock people, entertain. But what is this? I want to show you. Yeah. Michael Scott from Dumble Mifflin. It is not occasional word. So I can be weird and awkward many times. So I see people are going. So there was less than 400 people. Okay. I forgot. I have this instruction. Who is this? This is this is strange thing which said me swim. So I will go now and swim. Oh, I see you go. Okay, so we have 3 minutes break because we'll go to P2P rooms and you will not have ability to pee in P2P rooms. So you have 3 minutes break, but I would swim. I would swim a bit today to let this online conference a bit memorable for all of you. Okay, 3 minutes, please, timer, and we'll continue with the next session, P2P contribution groups. So, yeah, hello. So our next session